Welcome to Sacrilegious Discourse.
For this is what the Sovereign Lord says.
Why do you need prophets to tell people who you are and what you want?
If you can justify everything that the God of the Bible has done, then you can justify any of your behavior.
A lot of this mentality is trickling into what is now mainstream right-wing Christianity.
I am capable of empathy greater than this God of the Bible.
This is a Bible that they tell kids. This is the good Lord. This is the good book. He is fantasizing about murder, mass murder.
Head over to sacrilegiousdiscourse.com right now to find out how to leave us a review or support us on Patreon.
Hey there, sinners and saints. It's your favorite Bible-bashing duo from Sacrilegious Discourse, and we need your help.
That's right, folks. We're raising funds for some heavenly equipment and a studio that doesn't sound like it's in the depths of hell.
Our current setup, let's just say it's more apocalypse than audiophile.
So if you want to hear us dissect the Bible without the background noise of demonic squirrels, chip in a few bucks.
We're aiming for $5,000 to upgrade our audio and build a studio worthy of blasphemous banter.
Donate today and help us spread the good word of atheism.
You can find a link right on our homepage, sacrilegiousdiscourse.com. Every dollar counts.
Even if it's from your collection plate. Husband!
Wife!
Do you know what we're doing today?
Well, we are going over a Q&A.
We are. Do you know what chapters we're covering?
I can't tell you because it's been so fucking long since we read the Bible.
It's Zechariah chapters 5 through 8.
Okay. All right. And it's not a Saturday, so this is not a Q&A Saturday.
It's Q&A, not on Saturday, probably never again.
Except unless we're lucky to
Right.
end up on a Saturday at some point.
And you can bet your bottom dollar I'll be really excited on that day, I can tell you.
Yeah. So you got some good questions and answers for us today?
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
And I have some, I have some good info.
Well, all right. That's a better answer than I normally get from you.
Well, yeah.
All right. You ready to do this?
Yes, I am.
Let's do it.
Okie dokie. All right, we are going to get into this Q&A of Zechariah, chapters 5 through 8.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Do you remember why I was so emphatic that we do a 1 through 8? That I make sure that we have that kind of separate and demarcated off from the rest of the book of Zechariah?
Yeah, because the first 8 chapters are generally considered the only ones that might have been written by Zechariah.
Correct.
The rest of them are definitely not from the same time frame.
Correct.
From what I understand.
Yes. Yes. As you said, the first 8 chapters are most likely authored by Zechariah, since he is explicitly named as having done so and is the prophet delivering the word of the Lord.
Right.
Okay. That doesn't always mean anything, but the first 8 chapters are firmly dated, structured, and grounded, like with events and everything.
Right.
They took place around 520 to 518 BCE during the reign of Darius the First, or Darius the Great.
Okay. Yep.
They were written in the post-exilic period during the early Persian period, shortly after the Babylonian captivity.
Got it.
And Zechariah is working alongside Haggai to encourage the rebuilding of the Second Temple in Jerusalem.
Right.
And he's focused on the restoration of Judah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So all of this is happening.
Right. That all tracks with what we read. Yep.
Mm-hmm. These first 8 chapters are very apocalyptic and visionary in tone.
Yes, they are.
Featuring symbolic dreams, angelic interpreters, and divine promises.
Yeah.
That is not what we're going to see in the coming chapters.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I will get into that at the end here, just to give you a taste of what's to come so that you are prepared for the vast difference.
Got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
But characters like Joshua, the high priest, and Zerubbabel, the governor, are very prominent in these first 8 chapters.
Yeah.
Historical figures that were involved in the restoration.
Right. It's like a historical accounting, essentially.
Yeah,
right.
exactly. And the emphasis is on repentance, purification, hope, and the coming of God's kingdom through restoration rather than violence. And again, we're going to see a very dark turn.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, the things, and the reason I'm going over this is because this also serves to sum up the 8 chapters as a whole. Okay. Before I get into the Q&A for 5 through 8, I just want to kind of catch us up to where we are since it's been a while.
Yeah.
And these 8 chapters are separate. I think I said that this is kind of referred to as First Zechariah.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
So in those first few chapters, we had the famous 8-night vision or visions.
Yeah.
8 visions in one night is what I'm trying to say.
Right.
Yeah. And that was chapters 1 through 6.
Okay. Yeah.
We had the crowning of Joshua as a Messianic priest king.
Right.
And that was weird because we don't crown our priests.
Right.
That was weird.
Yeah.
But they couldn't give it to Zerubbabel because of
He's
the
just
politics.
a fucking governor or something.
Well, it's the whole politics of the time.
He got a ring, though.
Yeah, he did get a ring. Yes. We also had oracles of hope, calls to repentance, and exhortations to justice and mercy in the final chapters 6 through 8, which echo themes from earlier prophets like Amos and Isaiah. Okay.
Yep.
So that kind of brings us to where we are with chapter 5.
Yeah.
Okay. And like I said, I just kind of wanted to give a little bit of background there to catch us up.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So here we are, chapter 5. And he has one of his visions.
Yeah.
Right?
As he does throughout this whole
fucking
thing.
pizza roll. Right? Flies in.
Yeah.
On wings.
Something like that. Yeah.
On the wings of love is a pizza roll.
These were some weird fucking visions.
Yes. Very weird.
Yeah.
So previously, God gave a promise that the Messiah will remove sin from the land. And this will come either through forgiveness in the case of those who repent or destruction in the case of those who continue in their sin.
Right.
Okay. And the latter judgment is now pictured in the vision of a huge flying scroll that announces God's judgment on all those who choose to ignore God's law.
Okay.
And it's front and back.
Yeah. I remember that.
Yeah. It's very important that you know that because on one side is how they have done each other wrong. And on the other side is how they have done God wrong. Yeah.
I see.
We didn't pick that up, but that was in the notes that I got.
Okay.
They mentioned that.
Was this referencing stuff from the Bible as the reason why they think that, or was that just their opinion? Do you remember?
I didn't note it down, but from what I read, it was mentioned. Like in the Hebrew, one side was this
so like
and one side was that.
if you dig into like different texts or whatever, or something like that, different interpretations maybe.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's another thing that we have to keep in mind throughout this is that there are different versions of this story.
Got it. Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
This is very important.
Sure.
The dimensions of the scroll, interestingly enough, that they are given in the text.
Yeah.
They match the dimensions of the porch of Solomon's temple as described in 1 Kings.
Okay.
Right?
That's weird.
Weird, right?
Although we do know that the Old Testament loves certain numbers too.
Mm-hmm.
So that doesn't necessarily mean anything in particular. I wouldn't, but it isn't a weird connection there.
I think because they were like, hey, you know how big Solomon's fucking temple was?
Right.
Okay. So this scroll was so fucking, no, it wasn't as big as, no. Okay. You're right. No. Okay. It wasn't as big as the temple. Yes, I hear you. But okay. But listen, it was as big as the porch.
Right.
Like, I think it was because everybody knew the dimensions. And so it was like, to give you an idea of how big this was, like to make it huge in your mind.
Sure.
It was a comparison.
Well, and
thing.
maybe also by using Solomon's porch temple, whatever thing, I mean, Solomon was known as the wisest, right?
Yes.
So like it would give some, like if you're relating it in people's minds to Solomon in any way,
Yep.
it would lend some like credibility and wisdom to the text, maybe.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they couldn't make it as big as the temple, but they could make it as big as the porch, which I just appreciate.
Oh, come on. This is the Bible. They can do whatever the fuck they want.
But I appreciate that they didn't go all the way.
Right,
They didn't go all in.
Right.
They were like, no, we can't make it that big. So this pizza roll, this double-sided scroll.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's there. So because it's there, no one has any excuse because the scroll is large enough for all to read.
Oh.
And it flies over the whole land so that all can see it.
Did it fly really slowly so you could read it? And did it flip over like when it was flying?
That's what I wonder because
I mean, like, just saying.
Okay, so here's the thing.
I can barely read like the fucking like the planes that fly over with their things,
Right? Yeah. And if there's a list, like I have to cover part of the list because my eyes accidentally like glaze over. Like I can't pick out data if there's too much of it.
Right.
So, yeah. So, I mean, it could fly and be big all at once, but if you don't hold still and let me, have a few minutes.
Like, dude, couldn't you just Xerox it and like give me a copy? Because that would be a whole lot fucking easier.
You are God.
Right. That's what I'm saying. If you can make a 20-foot scroll fly through the air, you can sure as hell get me a copy. That's small. I think that could be managed.
I think that
could be,
And I don't think that's a big ask.
Right. No, you should be able to do that, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So whether wrong actions are directed against God or against others, the wrongdoers will not escape punishment. Okay? Since everybody can see it, you're fucked. Okay?
Sure.
Yeah. Now, many people believe that the text on the scroll contained the 10 Commandments.
Oh.
That's not in the text. They're just like, clearly it did.
Oh, okay.
Randomly.
I'm not sure where they got that from, but okay.
Well, let me tell you where they got that from.
Okay.
Because some of the things that were mentioned that was on the scroll is that to steal is to injure your neighbor.
Okay.
And to perjure is to dishonor God because you had sworn in his name.
Now,
and those
correct me if I'm wrong.
Each side.
Yeah. But correct me if I'm wrong, though. Mm-hmm. This was a vision that Zechariah had, right? Mm-hmm. This wasn't like an actual event that they recorded that happened in history.
Correct.
Okay. So I'm just trying to separate the two in my mind as, how they're talking, the apologists are talking about this in a way that
they're like no, it totally
this
happened.
Is how this happened, but I'm like, no, this was a fucking vision. So it didn't happen to anybody except for Zechariah
in his head.
Right? Yeah, this was a goddamn fever dream.
And you know what? I'll even give you sure. God put it in there magically. He had a magical vision from God, sure, but nobody else saw it.
Right.
So it doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah. Like this sound like they're making up excuses. Like I understand you do your research through the lens of an apologist sometimes, but this just sounds like an excuse to make up things to where people had a better understanding than they actually did.
Yeah.
Because this was all in Zechariah's head from the way I read it. And
he was hardcore trying to get this religion back going.
Right.
So of course he was quoting shit that was from, ages old, the lore.
Well, yeah. I mean,
he was digging in and pulling out the measurements. And
that's what religion is. It's metaphors and symbolism and, making connections in people's heads with things so that they understand it better. Mm-hmm. So when you're pulling out things like Solomon's porch and, measurements that people recognize and you're talking about things that were in the 10 Commandments, you're making connections in their brains that are like, oh, yeah.
Anytime you add something new, you 110% have to tie it to something old.
Right.
You can't introduce new stuff without tying it to the old.
Right.
So that's what he was doing.
Yeah.
So, okay. So that was, we're still in chapter 5. Okay. That was the first half of chapter 5.
Okay.
Okay. So then he's got another vision, right? The woman in the basket, remember?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So Israel had often fallen into idolatry and sexual immorality as they just define those terms.
I think that's pretty much every generation from what I understand. And people always complain about that even today.
Yeah.
So I whatever.
Which is funny because like the men that are like the hardcore Christianists with their little trad wives.
Yeah.
They want to sex it up so goddamn bad and be allowed to just fuck without it being called rape or anything because they're like, there is no rape if it's my wife. They want to sex it up so fucking bad. They are the sex freakest freaks. But then they're like, don't be no sexual deviant.
Well, you've seen the images where they show the Bible belt overlaid with the porn belt.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
They basically match.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Because repressed ideas about sexuality cause people to think in unhealthy ways about sexual relationships.
Right.
So,
and I'm not here to kink shame anybody if porn is your thing or if you are a sex worker, whatever.
No, I'm not shaming people. I'm saying they view sexuality in a very shameful light, and therefore they go behind closed doors to,
get the deed done.
Right. Yeah. It's an unhealthy way to deal with that.
And
that's what I'm saying.
It causes hypocrisy
to absolutely.
The max.
Yeah.
It's just so gross.
Well, and obviously there's you could go probably even right now to the newspapers and news feeds and find some sort of a religious leader that's done something sexually horrible, and that's because these people are they're repressed. Yeah. And I'm not excusing their actions. They're still terrible, horrible actions.
No, but it does help to understand why they are the way they are. You can understand the psychology without excusing the psychology.
Right. Well, it's part of why I think religion is bad overall. That aspect of it is not a healthy way to be.
And I'm not saying that the opposite extreme. I'm not saying you got to go and fuck everything that moves.
No.
That's the opposite extreme.
But you have to be able to explore your own sexuality.
Yeah.
You have to be able to
consensually.
Right.
And yeah.
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 It's I always relate it to this. It was the funniest thing. My brother went to Europe when he was younger, and he came back with a bottle of Jack Daniels. He was in 8th grade. But the rules over in Europe were if you could see over the counter, you could order alcohol, right? Mm-hmm. But they don't have alcohol problems like we do here in the U.S. Yeah. It's not that people aren't alcoholics. That definitely happens.
Right.
But it's not to the extent that it is here in the U.S.
Right.
And it's because we treat it as a terrible, horrible thing. A shameful thing. Right. Mm-hmm. And when you repress something or make it evil or bad, that is what causes people to act unhealthy towards that thing.
Yep.
So it's not that we should accept everything. It's that we should have everything on the table to discuss.
Yes, that's what it is.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Let's talk about it.
Yeah. Let's talk about sex, baby.
It's true. It's so true. So, okay. Idolatry, sexual immorality, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Right. Therefore, idolatry and everything associated with it must be removed from Israel's land.
Must. Yeah. Get the fuck out of here.
Get those bad sex things out of here.
Yeah.
Right. So in Zechariah's vision, images of greed, materialism, and dishonesty for profit are symbolized by a large container inside of which is a woman. And it's very likely that she is a prostitute.
Oh.
And
okay.
Evil and wickedness as a persona was always associated with the feminine noun.
Right.
And that's why it was a woman.
Well, and then they called the woman wickedness
Iniquity.
or something like that.
Yes, her name was Iniquity.
Okay.
Yes.
Right.
So the basket was an ephah. It and the lead disc that was the lid.
Yeah.
Those were units of measurement and symbols of commerce. So the basket was how you measure a regular doohickey of grain.
Got it. Okay. Yeah.
So the woman in the ephah is supposed to represent Judah, which will be visited for its sins. The lead on the ephah, within which the woman was enclosed, represents the wrath of God, bending down the nation in the measure of its sins.
Okay.
And so what we're saying here is the woman represents the mass of iniquity of this nation and the equal measure of punishment that God will bestow.
Ah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was a very
symbolic
vision.
And
it wasn't just when we were reading it, we were like, what the shit is this random bullshit?
Well, and it would have made more sense if you were used to these things in your society, right?
Yeah.
If we talk about things today, we understand symbolism much better than we would understand symbolism from 2,000, 3,000 years ago.
Of course. I mean, this was a meme for them. This was like this is a 2,500-year-old meme is basically what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay. So the meme is Iniquity is bad and she is, in the basket the size of the measure of grain.
Right.
And the lid is God coming down on it.
I'm just imagining Zechariah telling this dream to people and they're like, oh, damn.
Yeah.
Reacting to it like we might have that's some crazy symbolism, man.
Like good meme.
Whoa.
Oh, yoink, stealing that. Or like the one with the popcorn, like, I'm just watching this unfold.
Right, yeah.
And that's how I would be if you claimed that you had visions. So the container and its contents are then carried away by two more women.
Yeah, with wings.
With wings,
right.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because I was like, summer breeze, always?
Sure.
I don't know. What kind of wings?
They went to Canaan, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, they went to Babylon.
Oh, that's right.
Back when problems started.
Yeah, my bad. My bad.
I mean, sometimes it's kind of like the same-ish, but not really. I don't know.
Sure.
Whatever. It's all a mess.
One of those non-gaudy lands. Whatever.
Right. Wrong God. There the woman will be at home among the ungodly idol worshippers awaiting final punishment. They're like, get out of here and go back where you came from. Take your sin. You are sin. Like, take it all with you.
I didn't realize she was waiting final punishment, though.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay.
The land of Israel will at last be free of her defiling influence because they got rid of it. So
God's getting rid of that sin. Mm-hmm. He's like, I'm getting it the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was chapter 5.
Okay.
So now we're on to chapter 6. And this is the interesting bit. This is when we get some horses.
Yeah.
Okay.
4 of them, if I recall.
4 of them. Yeah.
But not the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse.
No. But similar colors.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I did a little bit of a deep dive on these because I was really into the fucking horses. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but let me catch you up. Here's what Zechariah saw.
Sure.
Okay. Having cleared the land of sin, God establishes the kingdom of the Messiah with its worldwide authority. And when we're talking Messiah here, we're still in the Old Testament. We don't know what's to come. Okay.
Right.
They just have some mysterious Messiah guy coming eventually someday.
Sure.
Okay.
And the Jewish people still believe that, right? Like that's still part of their belief system.
Yes, exactly. The final vision begins. The final vision. Okay. It begins with the appearance of 4 chariots coming out from the stronghold where God dwells. 2 mountains of bronze.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the bronze of the mountains from which the chariots came is generally associated with strength and judgment. Okay. That's why they were bronze, like that. It meant something. Okay.
Yeah.
The 4 chariots represent the 4 monarchies or empires. And I'm going to break this down for you.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
The horsemen of Zechariah chapter 1 were observers out on patrol. Do you remember that? Like they were standing in the myrtle or whatever.
Right.
Like standing in a fucking ditch.
Yeah.
So they were just observers. They were just witnesses. They were like scouts for a recon mission. Okay. Whereas these guys, these 4 chariots and their horses seem to be hostile agents of God's judgment.
Okay. All right.
They are emissaries of his war against the earth.
Oh.
Okay.
This sounds very much like
No.
Okay.
No. They are scary messengers, though. They're not doing the harm. They're just going to tell you about it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. But I thought that's kind of what the 4 horsemen do.
Neither of these sets of horses are to be confused with the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse mentioned in Revelation, because those are chaos agents of judgment who bring destruction with them.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Fair.
So we've got recon in chapter 1.
Yeah.
Now we've got, I have some words for you, sir, my good sir. And then at the end of the Bible,
right,
as a whole,
they bring that shit.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And let us not forget too, these are believed to be angels because they are forces of God.
Sure.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. So in the first chariot were red horses. Like this is in the text. Okay.
Yeah.
And that represents the empire of the Chaldeans, which overthrew the empire of the Assyrians.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the second chariot were black horses. Cyrus, at the head of the Persians and the Medes, brought devastation and death to the empire of the Chaldeans.
Okay.
And that was called the North in many parts of the Bible.
Got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that is important because we talk about we're going to say that the black horsemen went north.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the third chariot were white horses. The empire of the Greeks, founded by Alexander the Great, which destroyed the empire of the Persians. Alexander was splendid in his victories and mild towards all that he conquered.
Got it.
Okay.
So therefore he gets a white horse.
He gets a white horse.
Got it. Okay.
In the fourth chariot were grizzled and bay horses or dappled horses. It depends on your interpretation.
Sure.
Okay. I also saw it referred to as party colored horses.
Okay.
Like sprinkles or something.
Got it.
Okay. I like to call them dappled. I just like that word.
Sure.
Okay. So the Greeks divided after the death of Alexander. And I think I got into this earlier at one point.
I recall talking about something like that.
There were the Lagidae who attacked and subdued Egypt. And then the other were the Seleucidae.
Okay.
And they subdued Syria under Seleucus. Okay.
Say that 6 times fast.
Right, exactly. So the dappled horses represent the empire of the Romans, which were the Ptolemies.
Okay.
Or the Greeks, which were the Lagidaes.
Got it.
Okay. Of those guys, the Greeks and the Romans, some were good, some were bad, some despotic, some moderate, some cruel, some mild. Thus, dappled. Exactly.
Yeah, got it.
You get me. Okay. So when we're talking about these horses, he mentions them, what colors they are, right?
Yeah.
First we've got this, then we've got this, then we've got this, right? Then he says what directions they went. He doesn't mention the red ones when he's giving his directions.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he doesn't mention east when he gives his directions.
Okay.
Okay. Also, there's a question about the interpretation, which I will get into here shortly. Okay. He says the black ones go north.
Yeah.
Okay. Then he says the white ones follow. And so some people think that means that they went west because that is the other direction that they would have gone.
Sure.
So a lot of Bibles will say west is where the white ones went.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think, based on what I've read, that I think the white ones went after the black ones north.
Okay.
I'm going to read this and just you tell me what you think.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So the chariots speed to the four corners of the earth to spread God's rule throughout the world. God is particularly pleased to see the nations to the north conquered. Yeah.
Right.
For that was the direction from which most of the enemy conquests of Israel came. You know, they're always talking about the wicked north.
They
right?
are, yeah.
Yeah. The north is scary.
Apparently.
Yeah. Israel's captivity and reestablishment in its land was a foreshadowing of the events pictured in these visions. The punishment of the sinners, the removal of idolatry, and the setting up of the Messiah's kingdom. Restored Israel had turned from its sins, put away idolatry, and was now in the process of establishing a God-centered national life once again through the rebuilding of the temple. Okay. Now I'm going to read verse 6 to you. The one with the black horses is going toward the north country, the one with the white horses toward the west, and the one with the dappled horses toward the south.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you notice the red is missing.
Right.
And the east is missing. And it said that our version says toward the west is where the white goes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Notice he skipped right over the first horses, the red ones.
Sure.
Right. Those were the first horses that came out of the mountains.
Yeah.
Okay. Their associated empire, Babylon/Chaldeans, they'd already fallen. That's why.
Oh.
So they didn't go anywhere.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
The one that they're associated with is done.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
The crimson color of the horses symbolizes bloodshed and cruelty, particularly with regard to what Babylon did to Judah and Jerusalem during the exile. It shows the cruelty of the Chaldeans toward the Jews and the carnage they committed in the land of Judea. Okay?
Okay.
So that's why we don't mention the red ones in sending them somewhere.
Okay.
Because they're done. They already did their thing.
Got it.
Okay?
Yeah.
So the white horses go west, right? Some translations say go after them, after the black ones.
Yeah.
Okay. Which I already said, right?
Right.
Implying either west or following the black north. The Hebrew word used here can mean after them in either space, meaning direction, or time, meaning sequence. And that's why we're not sure which one. Did they go to the north with the black, or did they go west? We don't know. Right.
Yeah.
And why not east? Why is east right out? I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah. So but a lot of them just translated as they went west because that is the direction we decided they went.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Some commentators and translators interpret this to mean that the white horses are going to the same region as the black ones, north, possibly reinforcing God's judgment or surveillance there. Why send 2 horses north, you might ask, husband?
Well, wasn't the black horse bad and then the white horse was not as bad?
Well, the horsemen are delivering messages too, though. Like, there's the symbolism of what they represent.
Yeah.
But then there's also the, like, actuality of them doing a thing.
Got it.
Okay?
Yeah.
And you have to keep them separate, even though they're the same thing.
All right.
Okay? So Babylon, which had just fallen or was in the process thereof, depending on your dating of this whole thing, was the symbolic and literal source of oppression. And Magog, which is more apocalyptic in nature, is often tied to future threats from the north. Okay.
All right.
So, and we've talked about before how everything scary and bad came from the north.
Right.
So I think, in my opinion, that the white went after the black north, not the white went after the black west.
But explain why. Like, what is your reasoning for that?
Because, for one thing, the wording, they went after the black.
Right. No, I agree with that.
Okay.
I didn't know, like, what the lead up to that, like, why does that make you think that?
Because there's the phrasing for one thing, right?
Yeah, right.
But also because the north is scary and bad, you got to send them both north.
Okay.
All right. Like, there's just so much bad happening. And Magog, we've got that scary monster Magog in the future.
Right.
We don't know what the fuck's happening. It's all scary right now.
Sure.
Like, they're very, you know?
Yeah.
And I feel like the white horses went north.
Okay.
I'm very like, oh, God told me in a vision. No, I just feel like that makes more sense.
I mean, ultimately, we're arguing about a vision of horses and where they went.
Yeah.
So just to keep that in perspective.
No, I know. It pisses me off that, like, they went after, and then they're like, yeah, that means west. And I'm like, but it could mean east. Like, why did you pick counterclockwise as opposed to clockwise?
Well, yeah, no. And that's part of our argument throughout this book is that, like, a lot of this stuff where they interpret stuff is just arbitrary, really. They're like, well, I think it's this instead of that. And a lot of times it makes sense, but
once you understand, like, maybe they'll come back at me and be like, no, bitch, they read their compass counterclockwise. We know that's why west comes after north.
And I'm sure.
And then I would be like, oh, my bad. Okay. Then it's not arbitrary.
Right. And I'm sure somebody has a better answer to this than what we were able to come up with.
Sure.
But I don't know what it is. So.
But I was very curious. And so I did a lot of looking.
Right.
And this is the best I could find. And my money's on north.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And this allows verse 8 to make a lot more sense. I'm about to read you some verse 8.
Got it.
Ready?
Yeah.
Then he called to me, look, those going toward the north country have given my spirit rest in the land of the north.
Those.
Mm-hmm.
Plural.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's talking about, like, he doesn't mention any of the other directions again.
Right?
Yeah. He's like, northy, north.
Right.
And then I was all like, north.
Yeah.
Tell me the white didn't go north.
No,
Right?
that makes sense. That makes some sense.
Okay. Whew. That was my favorite bit. Okay. All right. So now we're moving into the next bit of chapter 6.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is the symbolic crowning of Joshua, the high priest.
Okay.
Okay. So just as the setting up of the Messiah's kingdom will be marked by the crowning of the Messiah as universal king, so the reestablishment of the nation Israel was marked by the crowning of Joshua.
Okay.
Okay. The crown was made from gold and silver brought from Babylon by some exiles who had recently arrived in Jerusalem.
Okay.
Remember, we were kind of like, why are they giving him this crown made of gold and silver? Like, what? Who cares? They had brought that gold and silver back with them.
Oh,
that's the important bit.
All right.
And I don't remember.
So they're like kind of like reclaiming their
Yeah.
wealth or something, or
not just reclaiming their wealth, reclaiming their legacy
Sure.
and their heirloom, their rights, their all of that.
Sure.
Yeah. So a coronation of the high priest was not only unusual, as I said at the beginning,
Right.
it was downright unthinkable to crown a high priest. Priests were never crowned as kings, and kings were never priests.
Right.
Period. The end.
Right.
Okay. Never happened.
Yeah.
Okay. Second Chronicles tells the tragic story of King Uzziah, who tried to function as a priest and was stricken with leprosy until the end of his life.
Oh,
I remember that.
I remember that.
Yeah. Throughout the history of Israel, God had commanded a separation between church and state, between the religious and the civil leadership of Israel.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and now Zechariah's like, but hear me out.
Okay. Yeah.
God wants church and state to marry each other.
Well, yes and no. I think part of this is that the political powers that were in control at that point were not going to let Zerubbabel be
no, that's
king.
exactly
So
what it was.
There was just a symbolic crowning to give them legitimacy as a people.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. So they were like, we can't crown our dude. We will crown our fucking priest.
Right.
Boom.
Right.
Yeah. But it was still just, I don't know. It's gross.
Yeah.
But because the restored nation of Israel was still under Persian rule, the coronation of the Davidic prince Zerubbabel would have appeared to be an act of rebellion.
Sure.
So the Persians, on the other hand, were not likely to object to a religious ceremony marking the restoration of Israel's national life and the reconstruction of their temple.
Right.
So I'm like, yeah, sure, crown some fucking priest guy, what the fuck ever.
Yeah.
Go ahead, we don't care.
Yeah.
So that's why they did it.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
All right, so Zechariah's words spoken on behalf of God further indicate that the crown rightly belonged to Zerubbabel. So everybody knew. Okay?
Right.
Though the words were addressed to Joshua, they did apply to Zerubbabel. It was Zerubbabel, not Joshua, who was, quote unquote, the branch in David's family tree.
Right.
And the royal descendant entitled to the throne of Israel.
Josh was like, I'm just hanging on to this for you, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. You can have it. I don't really want it.
Right.
Joshua's rightful place was as the high priest who assisted the civil ruler. The two men, because of the peaceful understanding between them, led the nation in the ways of God. So they were like, okay, this is how we going to do it.
Right.
Half for me, half for you. Yeah, perfect. Okay. One of us got to give up a little bit. No, I know. You give up 3%. I give up 3%. Dude over there that's given all these visions for us.
Yeah.
Zechariah.
Right.
He gets the 6%. And that way we each have given up a little bit of, you know what I mean? They're spreading the wealth. Okay. Zechariah is being their mouthpiece.
Got it.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So their joint rule fittingly foreshadowed the rule of the true branch, the king, priest, Messiah, is what,
That's what Zerubbabel was, though.
Yeah.
Like that's what I didn't understand. Like they're talking about this in the apologist circles as this is referring to Jesus, but I'm like, they literally just referred to Zerubbabel
as the branch.
As the fucking branch.
Yeah.
And you're trying to tell me that this is Jesus. And I'm like, no.
But that's because Jesus is also referred to as the branch.
Sure. But
when you
we also know that when we get to the New Testament that they did a lot of like backtracking to the Old Testament to make things fit.
Yes, they did.
So it's not like that doesn't mean shit to me.
No. And I did not realize the chapters to come.
Yeah.
I did not realize until I was putting this together.
Right.
I did not realize how much spelunking those New Testament turds did.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a little fucking annoyed, to be honest.
The closer we get to the New Testament, the more it's like just popping in there, and it's like, oh, come on, guys.
Yeah, like you didn't even try. You opened to like the last chapter and we're like, boom, let's take some of this, some of that.
Right.
Yeah. Wasn't there some guy like that betrayed somebody for some coins? Yeah, we got that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's going to happen.
Right.
I'm like, get the fuck out of here, you unoriginal fucks. Not prophecy, y'all.
Right.
I can write shit back planning in my planner.
But that
doesn't make it have happened.
Right. But they obviously put a lot of emphasis on prophecies. So like, because these prophecies that are in the end of the book, this is what the New Testament was very much based on.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of, they felt a lot of pull towards these prophecies and the merit they put behind them, right? They felt that these are very legitimate.
Yeah.
So that's what helped create Christianity.
It's just so annoying. Actually, I sent you a podcast episode from a podcast that I just recently subscribed to called Pulling the Thread. And in this podcast, she interviews Seth, what's his name? Andrews?
Yes.
Yeah. And he has a new book out about some of the things that are just like, but that's not in the Bible.
Right.
And it's a fantastic interview. Y'all should listen to it.
Sure.
Really, really good. And he gets into a lot of the not so much, guys.
Right.
Like, I don't mind you quoting your shit at me, but you got to get it right.
Well, and they generally don't.
Right.
You know, like
exactly.
when you have somebody coming at you with religion, they very rarely know what they're talking about in full.
They have so much memorized, though. And I'm like, that's great. You have all of that memorized.
Right.
But you're putting it together all wrong.
They've never really thought about it.
Right.
They've never dove into it to the point where they actually truly understand what they're saying. So that's what the problem is with it. They don't know what they're talking about.
You're like, ooh, so close. So the 3 recently returned exiles who supplied the gold and silver for the crown were apparently witnesses at the ceremony. The crowning took place in the house of their friend Josiah, and the crown was later placed in the completed temple in Jerusalem. There it was displayed as a memorial to those who gave it and as a symbolic guarantee of greater things to come.
Got it.
Okay. Yeah. So that was chapter 6. Now we're in chapter 7.
Got
okay.
It. Yep.
So we are going to confront the sin of religious hypocrisy.
Okay.
So excited. Okay. This is where they're like, do we still have to fast? Oh my God. So here's the thing though. In captivity, the Jews had instituted 4 fasts to mourn the destruction of Jerusalem.
Okay.
One fast was the month when represented the month when the Babylonians were under Nebuchadnezzar, who laid siege to the city.
Right.
Okay. Another fast was to mark the day 18 months later when the Babylonians broke through the walls and captured the city.
Okay.
And then another one was to mark the burning of Jerusalem and the destruction of Solomon's temple. Okay. And then the 4th one was to mark the final act of rebellion against the Babylonian governor of Judah. This fast commemorated the assassination of Gedaliah, the last Jewish ruler in Jerusalem.
And as we were told at the time, the last Davidic ruler.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. And the massacre of 80 men. So it's a big deal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now that the temple was beginning to take shape, it had been under construction for more than 2 years at this point.
Okay.
A question arose in the minds of certain Jews. With the temple somewhere around halfway completed, should they still keep the fasts that had been instituted in Babylon as memorials of destruction? And I remember me and you going, oh, probably, duh, why are you... Just don't be stupid. Oh my God.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, what? the fact that you're asking means you don't really want to, but they're like, but that was like to commemorate the tearing down. And now we have, like, I didn't put it together. Like,
well, and it's not like religious, practices are they're not scientific. They're just fucking, you're basically doing what God / your priest is telling you to do, you know?
But here's the thing.
Okay.
It's important to note that these additional fasts were not commanded by God.
Oh.
They had been instituted by man.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
So they're like, do we still have to do this thing that we told us to do ourselves?
And the answer to that would be no.
Yeah.
I mean,
He's
obviously.
Like, y'all are stupid. Y'all ain't even behaving on the off days.
Right.
Like, don't worry about it.
Right. Yeah.
Stupid.
I need you to do the shit that I tell you to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yet because they were traditionally practiced for so long, at least 70 years, they developed a legitimacy of their own.
Got it.
So, and I didn't know that. Like, I didn't catch any of how all this works.
Well, yeah. I mean, when it was written, that would have been taken for granted, right? Like, that's not something that we're aware of. That was just a tradition that started happening because of the Babylonian exile. Right. Because we didn't live through that. Right.
And it makes sense that they would have done that. That they would have created these ways, these 4 times a year to get together in mourning.
Feel closer to your homeland, to your God, to whatever, right? Yeah.
But here's the thing. Zechariah replies that those fasts had no value in God's sight anyway. Self-pity, not repentance toward God, was what had prompted the people to keep them.
Got it.
So they were indulging, they were wallowing.
Yeah.
Instead of, I mean, that's one way you could look at it.
Sure. I feel like Zechariah was a bit judgmental.
I do too.
A lot of things. So.
I feel like it's when tragedy strikes somebody, and then like after maybe a few years, if the person is still upset about it, and other people are like, "Can't you just get over it? Can't you just move on?
Right.
Build a bridge."
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, everybody mourns in their own time, assholes.
Sure.
You don't get to be the judge of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, but Zechariah is like, no, God says that you're being petty little bitches.
Right.
And I want you to stop crying and feeling sorry for yourselves. I want you to build that shit, and I want you to hurry up and get your sacrifices back on because daddy is hungry.
Right.
I need me some sacrifice goat.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Furthermore, the destruction they commemorated had come about only because they had been disobedient to God's prophets in the first place, according to their own little thing. Yeah. Through their own stubbornness, the people were driven out of what used to be a prosperous land. So God's like, no, you do not, stupid.
What a terrible thing to believe.
Right?
Because we sucked. We got destroyed. And driven out of our lands and whatever. Like, that's one of the things I really dislike about, religion. Is that it makes you feel guilty for things you didn't even do.
The self-hatred of not just you, but your entire ancestry.
Right.
Like, why? I don't want to feel shame I have enough shame and guilt that I should not carry for my own self.
Yeah.
You are going to add centuries of ancestry on top of that I'm supposed to feel guilt for and shame for. Fuck off with that bullshit.
Well, I feel like it was a way to control people, right? If you can get them to feel this way, you can leverage control over them because you have them already kind of in the palm of your hand. Like, well, you feel guilty with this because your ancestors fucked up and God's mad. Yeah,
the only thing worse than shame is hatred of other.
Right.
And dehumanization.
But it's very easy to get there from that shame because it's easy to transfer that shame to hate.
Yes. Exactly. So Zechariah rebuked the people of God for what their fasting had become. Indulgent seasons of self-pity instead of a time to genuinely seek God. Their lives were not right even when they did eat and drink, much less when they stopped.
Right.
A few days of fasting every year was not going to make up for the rest of the year of living for themselves. Everyday obedience would make their time of fasting meaningful, but their neglect of everyday obedience made their fasting actually hypocritical. If their ancestors had been obedient, they would never have needed to fast in the first place.
Those damn ancestors.
And their land wouldn't have been conquered and desolate. Yeah, exactly. You can always.
I hate it when my ancestors fuck me up, you know?
Right?
God.
Tin can, kick it down the road.
Right,
you know?
yeah.
And now they're finally like, fuck around and find out. These are the kids that are finding out.
Sure. I guess. Right.
Like in their religion.
Yeah, that's how they take it. That's how they believe it. That's what they're being told.
Right.
You know?
But every generation is I'm the kid that's finding out.
Well, yeah.
Every generation.
That's because if you don't have guilt and fear of what could and did happen to you, then you're not as malleable as you are if you are very confident in who you are and what you want, what you are able to accomplish. You are going to be very independent. They don't want independent people.
Right.
They want people that will listen to them and do what they ask them to do.
Well, that's interesting because that's what God wants. God wants people who will listen and obey.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you use those exact words that are written on my paper that you're not looking at.
I'm not.
I know. That's interesting though.
Yeah.
So here's the conduct that God desires. Okay. The Jews of Zechariah's day should not repeat the sins of their ancestors. Rather, they should show their obedience to God in lives of active justice, love, and mercy toward their fellows. Okay.
Sure.
They must avoid the temptation to exploit those who, for one reason or another, are disadvantaged. Stop being a dick. Stop screwing each other over. Okay?
Right.
Zechariah described the kind of obedience God wanted, beginning with decent and loving treatment of one's neighbor. The heartless attitude of their ancestors towards the needy was a reflection of a more deep-seated problem, their hardness of heart towards God. So y'all are being nasty to each other because y'all don't have God in your heart.
And this sounds like a great, idea, except that the people that were needy also got punished and sent from their land.
Yeah.
So like it didn't exclude them.
Right.
They got fucked over too.
Right.
Worse than they were already getting fucked over.
And the other side of that coin is, but they probably did something to bring that on themselves. And that's why they are in the position of being needy.
Right, but that's why I hate it when they extol the benefits of being a savior of the needy, and all. Like you don't really believe this. You're just using this as a way to get people to obey what you want them to do. Right. You don't really give a fuck about the poor and the needy. Right. You just want people to be not shitty towards other people, so you don't have to worry about them. Right. Right. Like that's all this is. You're controlling people. It's all about control of the people.
Yes. Because they ignored God's instruction to them through the prophets, God ignored their prayers to him when the enemy attacked. He's like, listen to me. I won't listen to you.
I just think he's a dick.
He is a dick. Yeah. God is a dick, period. Yes. Okay?
Hadn't said it in a while. I felt like I had to,
Yeah. As a result, they were taken into foreign captivity. That's what you get.
That did happen.
That's what you get.
I guess. Yeah.
When you do not listen to God and you having a share pole in your pocket, you get sent to foreign lands, and that's what happens to you.
Sure. Okay. Sounds legitimate. Yeah.
So that was chapter 7.
Okay.
Now we're in chapter 8.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is where everything's going to be magical and roses.
Oh, that's great. I love it when things are magic and roses.
Yeah. God promises the continuance of his favor to those who are returned from captivity. It's so wonderful. We've got this golden bridge or whatever and unicorns dancing across it.
Yeah.
Charlie. Zechariah goes on to outline the blessings that will come to Jerusalem. Yeah, they're going to come when God dwells there. I know that wasn't even a good come.
No, it wasn't.
It wasn't.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say it because I had to fuck up the unicorn and glitter stuff happening.
Okay.
Like it was just too much.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I put an erroneous ejaculation into that comment.
Got it. Okay.
God's love for Jerusalem was the reason why he punished it so severely. This hurts me worse than it hurts you, he said as he punched her in the fucking eye.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
With corresponding zeal, hold on to that word.
Yeah.
He will restore it to a favored place according to his covenant promises.
So just as much as he fucked you up, he's going to bring you back.
I'm going to love
just
you and hug you and squeeze you, said Elmira. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to read verse 2 of chapter 8 in our translation.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
This is what the Lord Almighty says. I am very jealous for Zion. I am burning with jealousy for her.
Sure.
Okay.
I remember that.
Yeah. Now, some translations use the word zealous instead of jealous. The word for zealous in the ancient Hebrew comes from the idea to become intensely red. It conjures up the thought of a face becoming flushed with deep emotion. So this line is supposed to indicate that God is passionately concerned. Not that he's like, I'm so jealous. You always get everything and I have envy and get nothing. It's not envy. It's passionate concern.
Okay.
Okay. So
except that he's been jealous quite a bit throughout the Old Testament.
And it's not envy.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
That word is not what you think it means because they should have picked a better word.
Sure.
Zealous would be better. I'm so zealously fucking upset right now. I'm upset with zeal and passionate concern. And I'm really, my face is turning red. I'm so mad. And I care so fucking much.
Sure.
You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So some scholars apply this line to the Jews themselves. They were supposed to be like the spouse of God, but they were unfaithful. They cheated on him with a Asherah pole.
Like always.
And so God punished them as an injured husband might be expected to punish an unfaithful wife.
Like
Oh,
okay.
You know the way if I cheat on you, how you get to punish me? You know how in the Bible, I guess that's okay? I've heard that. Strumpet and a whore.
I've heard that.
Yeah. If I do cheat on you, no, you cannot actually punish me.
Right.
I won't cheat on you, but if I did,
right,
you don't get to just punish me. That's
right.
not the way that goes.
No, I'm aware of that.
Moreover, if you cheat on me, I don't get to punish you.
Right.
I did have an ex that cheated on me, and I did kick him in the face with my combat boot.
Did you really?
I did. And I tried to punch him, and it hurt my hand so hard. And then later on, like when we talked about it later, he said he didn't even feel it hardly. The punch was just like a little sting. And that pissed me off so hard. Well, because it hurt my hand.
Of course he's going to say that, though.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. Maybe it did hurt. But
I know he felt the combat boot.
Right. Yeah, I bet.
It tore his face up.
I bet.
Yeah. And I wasn't just like a punk. I was actually in the army. That's why I had combat boots.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Oh, I got it.
Okay. So anyways, I'm not saying I will punish you if you cheat on me.
Right. But you might kick me with a combat boot.
I don't have combat boots. At this point, I'm turning 50 this year. So I'd probably just be like, go ahead, I guess.
You'd kick me with your spongy slippers?
No, I'd probably just be like, just clean up when you're done. And wait, just make sure you bring me some more washi tape, like stickers for my planner.
I won't. So
no, I know. I don't have the energy at this point in my life to like go through zeal or jealousy.
Right.
Like I'm tired. I just want to get a good night's sleep.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So some people apply that line to the Jews, right? Others apply it to the enemies of the Jews. Kind of like, though I used them as a tool and gave them the freedom to harm you, they exceeded their charge, and I will therefore deal with them in fury, with zeal, and with a sense of vindictive justice. I'm going to punch them in the dick.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's not much better, my guy.
No.
Violence is just not good.
It's just stop, man. Like,
just stop.
Be nice.
Stop being vindictive.
Be a good guy. You know what? You have the chance. You have the ability and shown the ability in the Bible that you could change people's hearts. Why don't you just do that?
Right?
Why don't you just make this better?
Just be
instead
nice.
of being a dick and killing people all the time.
Just be nice.
I don't understand.
Like the putting the words vindictive justice together.
Right.
Those words don't belong together.
No,
There
they don't.
is no justice that has vindictiveness in it.
This is why we don't let families decide the fate of people in criminal justice.
Ah, that's a nice callback to the episode of Star Trek Voyager that we just watched. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Where the families of the victims indeed did choose the punishment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I understand the want of families to choose punishments.
Right.
But it doesn't
that's
make
not
sense
justice.
because it's just retribution.
Yes.
That's all it is. And you can't see straight when you're the wronged party.
Right.
You don't have that ability.
Because here's the thing. The punishment of the person is supposed to be about the person.
Right.
Like, I don't want to say this isn't about you, because clearly it is about you. You were wronged. You were harmed.
Yeah.
Right? So you were wronged. You were harmed. And you need to go take care of yourself now.
Yes.
Bye. Now, while you're over there taking care of yourself, this problem is no longer about you. We've got this bad guy we've got to deal with. And we need to either try to rehab him, or if he's unrehabitable, we need to figure his shit out.
Sure.
And we need to do it in a way that is not cruel or inhumane, even though clearly he did a piece of shit thing.
And ideally, it exists in a world where it is dealt equally across the board.
Yeah,
you know?
like, can we not have like a white guy that like kills a bunch of people and then walks free versus a black guy who had like some weed in his pocket and goes to jail for life? What about if not that?
Right. Yeah. That would make way more sense than what we do now.
Right. I would like not that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So moving on anyway, God's a dick. Okay. So in the new community of God's people, there will be no place for fear or violence. Old and young alike will enjoy lives of freedom and contentment. Whee! It was like we planned that, but we didn't.
No.
This joyousness and glitter will be greater than they even can imagine possible.
Wow. That's a lot of joy and greatness.
It's making me seasick. Okay, so I'm going to read verses 4 and 5 of chapter 8.
Okay.
This is what the Lord Almighty says. Once again, men and women of ripe old age will sit in the streets of Jerusalem, each of them with cane in hand because of their age. The city streets will be filled with boys and girls playing there, right there in the streets.
Yeah.
You know how they be. Fucking kids bouncing balls off the side of your house.
The old guys with the canes can shake their canes at them.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm trying to take a nap and they're bouncing their balls on the side of the house, motherfucker. Okay. Because of the difficulty and hardship of returning to Jerusalem, there were probably very few old people in the city at this time. So he's painting like a very like pastoral picture here.
Got it.
You know?
Yeah. Like, hey, you're going to have the chance to grow old because it's going to be so great and wonderful.
Yeah, he's like, la, 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 la. Yeah. And their absence, the old people absence was very keenly felt. Sure. But God promised that all that would change one day, and the young and the old together would enjoy the city in safety again. Whee!
Well, you got to figure they just came back from Babylon, right? Mm-hmm. And if you were old enough to, if you were old, like you probably didn't make that trip back to Israel, right? You're just like, fuck it, I've lived here my whole fucking life. Yeah. I don't give a fuck. I'm done, man.
I get it. Like, I'm turning 50 this year. I get it, my guy. I'm not about a hike. You know, I'll stay here.
Like, I got 5 years at best, and I'm just gonna just sit here and enjoy it. So
peace be with you.
I don't want to come back and rebuild. I already got a place here, so I'm good.
Under his eye, you know, whatever. This was a significant promise and probably seemed a little too fantastic to believe, because in Zechariah's time, Jerusalem's walls were ruined. The city was only half built, and the walls wouldn't be completed for another 60 years, and the city was currently not safe and secure for anyone of any age.
Damn.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, like, fuck, man.
Right.
Right? Like, oh, this is not okay.
You know, and God could just snap his fingers.
I know.
You know, like,
but
hey,
he likes his people to suffer.
Right.
It's not worth it if you didn't suffer for it.
Yeah.
So, above all, the people will enjoy true fellowship with God. After their years of captivity, they will now begin to experience the blessings that God always intended for them to have. Proportionately, few among the exiles returned to the promised land. Like, we've only got a remnant that came back, and of them, it wasn't the old people. Right. So here, God is promising a gathering from exile to come that would far surpass the present gathering. He's like, not only are there going to be old people and kids, and it's going to be great. It's going to be a fucking party. It's going to be off the hook.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There's also going to be a ton of people.
Yeah. They were like saying they're going to come from all over the damn place.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Since the people had restarted work on the temple, conditions in Jerusalem had changed. God removed the afflictions of drought and enemy action that he had used to punish them in the past. In their place, he now gives blessings of agricultural prosperity and peace.
That's great.
Again, with the rainbows, you know?
Right.
The foundation for the temple had been set more than 15 years before. Though they faced a lack of resources and opposition, God wanted them to find strength for the work in his promise. Okay. Because he's like, take courage, finish the work. I will bless you. Find strength in your hands is one of the phrases that I meant to copy into here. And I didn't. It's one of the verses is strengthen your hands. Right. And that's what he meant. He was
what I'm hearing is, I don't give a fuck how hard this is. Get this shit done.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. God had allowed a period of difficulty, but he would not allow it to last forever. I love it when the punishment doesn't last forever.
Yeah.
I like it when I was grounded for a week, but I only had to do 2 days because my mom couldn't wait to get me out of the house.
I was going to say, it strikes me that if the punishment did go on forever, that people would get tired of that God.
Yeah.
You know, like, fuck you, dude.
I mean, why are these people not tired of this God is my question.
No, I don't quite understand that myself. I'm like, God, this guy has kind of fucked you guys all through your history. So.
Yeah. He's never not been bad, you know?
Right. At least according to your book.
Right.
You know? He's always punishing you fuckers.
Do you have a different version? Because this one is ugly.
It is.
God would bring prosperity and blessing to the once afflicted nation. God wanted his people to trust him. But even at that, God states that the restoration will only be complete when both Israel and Judah are brought back. So
based on that, they still aren't complete.
Right. These blessings will continue and will increase, but the people on their part must continue to behave rightly towards God and towards one another. That's not happening. That's a thing that's not happening.
Right. And that's one of those things where we've talked about like the lost tribes of Israel and stuff like that in the past and different things. But like there's not, it depends on how you interpret it, right? And that's where this whole thing gets muddled, is how people interpret all these messages that are in the Bible. And that's why this is so wrong. If you there is no correct message. You can't tell me that this one's right and that one's wrong, and there's like a million different versions of what is right and wrong in every version of what people believe of this story. You know, and it just that's part of what makes me go, I can't possibly believe in this, because y'all can't even agree on a single fucking message, like even in the same town, right? Let alone all together.
Yeah, and I mean, you have this one book, and it's crazy and stupid,
right?
Like it's not good. It's not good, you guys. Your religion is not good. It doesn't make sense.
Right.
All right, carrying on. We're almost done here. Okay, getting done with chapter 8. Okay, so. Upon the removal of his judgments, the fasts they had observed during the captivity may now be converted to occasions of rejoicing.
Okay. Yeah.
So, God says, in light of your glorious future, feasting is more appropriate than fasting. In view of all that God will do, the people should not waste any more time mourning over calamities of the past. Stop your crying, bitches. Get to work and party.
Right.
Okay. Work hard, party harder.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Instead, they should just look confidently to the future and turn their fasts of mourning into feasts of joy.
What I think is that Zechariah and the priest guy, Joshua and the king probably too. They were like, guys, when they fast, they don't bring us any fucking offerings, and we don't get to eat good. So
what if
tell
we
them
make
to
it
fucking stop.
Yeah, let's like do party all the time.
Yeah.
Because then they always bring extras.
Right.
And I got these big ass pockets in this robe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in contrast to the relatively few Jews who were at that time rebuilding the temple and the city, multitudes of Gentiles from far and wide are at some point going to come to Jerusalem to seek the God of Israel.
Okay. Okay.
So I'm going to read you a few verses here, starting at verse 20.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this is what the Lord Almighty says. Many peoples and the inhabitants of many cities will yet come, and the inhabitants of one city will go to another and say, let us go at once to entreat the Lord and seek the Lord Almighty. I myself am going. And many peoples and powerful nations will come to Jerusalem to seek the Lord Almighty and to entreat him. In those days, 10 people from all languages and nations will take firm hold of one Jew by the hem of his robe and say, let us go with you because we have heard that God is with you.
It's funny because we were reading this and I was thinking to myself that I recall a time when we were reading the Bible earlier on and they were very xenophobic. Like they did not want people joining their group. But now they're like,
there's only two of us left. We need more.
Well, that and the world's becoming more of a trade, center. There's more things happening, right?
Yeah.
There's more people.
They're
right?
progressing.
Yeah. So they're all of a sudden now they're wanting to accept more people in.
Yeah.
Because not only have they diminished as a group of people, but like this brings them strength. This brings them
more bitches.
Well, that too, yeah.
Bitches and riches.
Sure. So
okay, so I read that though for a purpose. Okay, because remember we were like jokingly kind of stuck on like, wait, is that 10 people from 10 languages or 10 nations or like 10 from each nation? Like we were joking, but like the question
was
remained.
Confusing. Yeah.
We're like, I don't know what the fuck that means.
Right.
So so I accidentally stumbled upon the answer to our fake funny question.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So in the immediate historical context, Zechariah was writing in the late 6th century BCE during the Persian Empire. Okay. Many peoples, quote unquote, and languages of the nations, quote unquote, would likely refer to the multi-ethnic populations within the Persian Empire, a vast domain stretching from modern day Greece all the way to India. Okay. So those phrases would have definitely included neighboring peoples, the Egyptians, the Babylonians, the Medes, Persians, Elamites, and all the other tribes spread throughout in the Levant and Mesopotamia. Okay.
Yeah.
So it echoes an imperial pluralism, a vision of many nations recognizing Israel's God. As the one, right?
Yeah.
So in context, Zechariah is probably envisioning the known world, not the literal globe.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's always the case in the Old Testament. Sure.
But a diverse, multilingual human community as they understood it at the time, which was still gonna be massive.
Right.
Because, as you said, they had expanded their understanding of their small little corner. Right. Their corner got a little bit big. Like when you're playing those games on your phone where you uncover a little bit of land at a time.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened here.
Well, they had been living in Babylon, right? So, I mean, they, just by the mere fact that they got displaced.
And I mean, they had traveled from fucking Egypt all the way to Canaan.
Right. Well, that's debatable. But
sure. I'm playing the game here.
Sure. Okay? No, I got it. But I mean, in this time frame, though, they literally were living in a different land and then came back to their own.
Expanded their understanding of geography.
Right. And
a little bit.
Babylon was a big hub of, probably commerce, trade, etc. So it exposed them to a lot of new ideas and new things.
Obviously, because that's why they got in trouble, because their idolatry came from all these other new ideas and new things from all these other people. Sure, but then
things like Zoroastrianism still show up in Christianity and stuff. So
exactly.
They got exposed to it and it was bad and wrong, but then they adopted some of it.
Yeah, and it never went away. The end. Okay, so that was on a small level, okay?
Yeah.
But on a theological and eschatological level, the phrasing of quote unquote every language of the nations leans very much into universalism. the idea that all of humanity will eventually recognize Yahweh as the one, right?
Okay.
It anticipates what the later texts, like Isaiah that we've already read and Micah that we've already read.
Yeah.
So when I say later text, not later in the book,
frames.
but later in the time.
Sure.
Yeah. They also proclaimed all nations will stream to the mountain of the Lord.
Got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Christian tradition and even some Jewish traditions read this as a global prophecy, not limited to geography. And yeah, we know that.
Yeah. Well, and this is even this is used in Christianity too, right? I mean, everybody will come to know the Lord. That's a thing that Christians love to say.
They do.
So,
yeah. But let's get into the 10. That's the bit we were.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so from this view, Zechariah is prophetically glimpsing a future beyond time and space as he knew it, a world where all peoples everywhere seek truth and justice through Israel's God. But what about the 10 men from every language? What the fuck is that about, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so 10 men is symbolic in Hebrew literature, not literal.
Okay.
It's a symbolic number, okay?
Yeah.
It implies a full representative group. It was enough, 10 was enough to form a community, as 10 men were needed for a Jewish minyan. A minyan was a quorum of 10 Jewish adults required for certain communal religious practices in Judaism.
Oh.
So when they said 10 people as a community or 10 people as representatives, it was meaning 10 to represent the whole.
Okay.
All
right.
The image is one of humble recognition, with outsiders clinging to a Jew for divine connection. So it's like a reversal of power. The formerly marginalized will become the spiritual leaders.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
That's how important Yahweh will become.
Yeah, because don't forget, he will always be like, don't let those other gods make fun of me.
Right.
You know?
Well, and God's promising his people something. He's like, hey, because you're like the OG worshipers of me, y'all are going to become like the spiritual leaders of the world.
Yeah.
You know, like y'all are going to have this important place in my new kingdom that incorporates everybody, you know?
My umbrella is big and my couch is bigger.
That sounds like a good deal, right?
Right?
I mean, that sounds like something I want to be a part of.
Okay. I was like, see ya. So in short, Zechariah probably meant the whole known world as he saw it, but the text intentionally opens the door wide enough for universal interpretation. It's a prophetic glimpse of a future where humanity, not just one people, seeks what is just and holy.
Sure.
Okay. And I'm like, if you want to think that, you can.
Right.
Okay. So I already went over why 1 through 8 required a stopping point.
Yeah.
I'm about to wrap this up real quick. I just wanted to bring it home by talking just briefly about chapters 9 through 14, which is the rest of Zechariah.
Okay.
Okay. These chapters lack precise dates, unlike the ones we just read. They appear to be from a later time period, possibly late 5th or even 4th century BCE.
Okay.
So, I mean, we're talking like 100 or 200 years later.
Well, late 5th century. Well, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
I think.
There's a shift in tone and content.
Got it.
These chapters are much more apocalyptic, symbolic, and cryptic. Themes are going to include divine judgment, messianic warfare, cosmic battles.
No shit.
And a future deliverance of Jerusalem.
Wow.
Yeah. I told you it gets dark. They're going to introduce 2 distinct shepherd figures.
Okay.
Often interpreted messianically. And then there's the famous pierced one passage.
Oh.
I didn't know it was.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I was like, is it a famous passage? Because I didn't know. The only pierced one I know is the New Testament one, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, that's the one that Christians often link to Jesus.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the chapters to come are less historical. They have less historical grounding.
Right.
They're more prophetic poetry and more like weirdo visions. And they're more concerned with the end times, divine kingship, and universal judgment than with an actual historical restoration.
Got it.
And so That's why that is considered Zechariah 2, and they are definitely separate from what we have just been reading.
Okay. All right.
They were written by different authors or even schools of prophets.
Got it.
So it might not even have been people that were his followers. It might have been an entirely separate school.
Well, sounds like we're in for some interesting stories.
Yeah, I accidentally read, because I was going over like my notes for the coming chapters.
Yeah.
In preparation because, we're trying to get back on schedule.
Right.
And it gets dark. Yeah. Okay. I was like, what the fuck?
Right.
Like, you know how the people are always bad? They're bad. They're going to be bad again. I can't even, I'm sorry, I can't even keep the spoilers to myself because I was just like,
you know what? That's not even.
We just came back from Babylon. We're not even in a different book. The temple's not even built.
That's not even a spoiler anymore, though. It's just how the book goes.
It's just how they be.
Right.
Why?
I don't know.
I don't know. I hate it so much.
Right. Yeah.
This is not Gilmore Girls. I can tell you that.
All right. Did you have anything else to cover?
Fuck no.
Okay. Well, that was our Zechariah 5-8 Q&A.
And a little bit of recap of 1-8.
Yeah.
Zechariah 1. First Zechariah.
Right. And a little bit of foreshadowing.
Yeah.
So, thank you everybody for joining us today. And we are really going to try to attempt to be back on some sort of a regular schedule going forward. We may fail occasionally still, but
I would just like the record to reflect that my notes are prepared for the rest of Zechariah. So anytime that we do not come down to our beautiful studio, ooh, husband giving me the stink eye.
Well, because even if it's prepared doesn't mean you always want to come down either.
No, that's true.
I'm just saying.
I know.
I know you're about to blame me.
I was about to throw you under the entire bus brigade. It's true. Nah, it's prepped, but it's going to depend on work schedules and what else we got going on. But it's ready.
Sure.
So we're ready
to roll this out and ready to keep going.
Yes.
Yeah. And we're feeling a little bit more like we built our studio down here. We got our basement studio we got in, and it's trash, but it makes us feel it's our trash, and we feel good about it.
Look, here's the thing: it's in the cold basement. So before we come down here, we're like, oh, I got to put my socks on. Oh, I got to put my sweater on. Okay, do I got everything? Okay, let's go.
Right.
And it's like we're
going to work.
We're going to work. We're going to a different place.
It
down
helps
the stairs.
A little bit, I feel like.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
And it keeps us awake.
It does,
the cold,
actually. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, I think that's all we got for today. Thank you, everybody, and we will see you next time.
Peace.